Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today, we're tackling something really important for anyone navigating news, legal discussions, or just trying to master more precise English vocabulary.
Absolutely. We're diving into two terms that, honestly, cause a lot of confusion even for native speakers.
That's right. We're looking at incarceration versus detention. They sound kind of similar, maybe get used interchangeably sometime.
But they have fundamentally distinct legal meanings.
Mm.
And getting them wrong, well, it really changes the picture.
It really does. Understanding the difference is, I think, critical if you're following criminal justice, global affairs, anything like that. It impacts how you understand someone's rights, their legal status.
Exactly. It's not just semantics. It's about accurately describing a situation. Misusing these words means you're fundamentally misrepresenting what's happening.
So our mission today is to give you that precision. And hey, speaking of mastering vocabulary, especially for all you English learners tuning in, you absolutely must check out Daily Colloquial English on YouTube. They have fantastic resources for this kind of everyday, practical vocabulary building. Seriously, subscribe, share it around. It helps us keep doing these deep dives.
Good shout. Okay, so let's get into it. The big question. What's the core difference between these two ways someone can be held in official custody?
I think fundamentally it boils down to the purpose and the timing. Let's maybe start with the heavier one, incarceration.
Sounds good. So incarceration, what's the first thing we need to know?
It's about punishment, legal punishment. It's the state of being locked up in a prison or jail because you've been found guilty of a crime.
That emphasis on punishment is crucial. You're incarcerated after you've gone through the legal process, a trial, a conviction, a judge has handed down a sentence.
Right. So if you see in a news report the defendant was sentenced to 5 years of incarceration, that tells you the legal fight is basically over for now. They've been convicted.
And they're now serving time as punishment. It generally implies a longer-term confinement post-conviction.
And it's quite a formal word, isn't it? You don't hear people casually saying, oh, he got 5 years incarceration down the pub.
Not usually, no. It's very much legal language, judicial language. You see it a lot in academic writing, government reports, journalism.
Like when people discuss incarceration rates, that's a big policy term.
Exactly. It refers to the whole system, the practice of imprisoning people after conviction. It's systemic. That's very different from everyday chat.
Yeah, colloquially, people just say prison or jail time. You know, he did 10 years of jail time. Simpler.
But that formal term, incarceration, carries the weight of that final punitive outcome from the justice system.
So let's quickly cover the word forms, because that's useful for learners. Incarceration is the noun.
The state of being confined. The verb is incarcerate. The court can incarcerate offenders.
And the adjective is incarcerated, like the incarcerated population, meaning people convicted and serving sentences.
Spot on. And synonyms here are also quite formal. Imprisonment, confinement. It's the definite post-conviction lockup.
Okay, so that's incarceration, fixed post-conviction punishment. Let's switch gears now to detention.
Right, and the first thing to grasp about detention is that it's much broader, a much wider category.
Wider how?
It means holding someone in official custody, but, and this is key, it's usually temporary. And it isn't always punishment. Often it's more of a preventive measure or just holding someone while something else happens.
Okay, so not necessarily because they've been found guilty of a crime yet.
Correct. The scope is huge. You find it in law, policing, definitely immigration, and even schools.
Ah, the aha moment. School detention.
Exactly. Almost everyone gets that one. What is school detention?
It's when you have to stay behind after class, usually for being late or messing about. It's punishment, sure, but it's temporary. You're being held for a bit.
Precisely. That small common example captures the core idea. Temporary official holding. It's not sending you to prison for years.
So applying that logic, if the police detain a suspect,
they're holding them temporarily. Maybe for questioning, maybe while they gather evidence, maybe waiting to formally charge them. They haven't been convicted of anything at that point.
Right. That temporary aspect feels really central then.
It is. And our source material actually breaks detention down into about 4 main contexts, which shows you just how broad it is.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, there's the legal or penal context. This is what we just talked about, short-term holding after an arrest. In a police station cell, maybe a local jail, often called being held on remand, waiting for bail or the trial. It's before any conviction.
Got it. Pre-conviction holding. What's next?
A really big one, immigration or administrative detention. This is when authorities hold non-citizens, perhaps asylum seekers or refugees.
Often in specific places, right? Like immigration detention centers.
Yes. And crucially, this isn't typically punishment for a crime in the traditional sense. It's administrative managing borders, processing claims, that sort of thing.
That's a massive legal difference. A headline about administrative detention means something very different from criminal punishment.
Absolutely. Then third, we have the one we mentioned, school discipline. Simple, but it grounds the concept.
And the fourth, you mentioned it could be politically charged.
Yes, the fourth is military or political detention. This is where states hold people deemed a threat, sometimes related to national security or during conflict. And this is where you sometimes hear about prolonged detention without trial.
Okay, yeah, that definitely rings a bell in terms of civil liberties discussions.
It does. So again, the vocabulary. The verb is detain. Police detained him. The adjective is detained, the detained person. Synonyms might be custody, remand, holding. It's about keeping someone temporarily.
So this really sets up the crucial comparison. When you're reading something, you need to know, is this about punishment after guilt, or is it about temporary holding for some other reason?
Let's nail that down. Purpose and duration. Incarceration. Purpose is punishment. Duration is generally long-term, post-conviction.
Okay, and detention.
Purpose is holding, could be investigative, administrative, preventative, or minor discipline. Duration is generally temporary or conditional. And crucially, it doesn't automatically mean guilt.
So let me check my understanding. If I read that someone was detained at the border, I should think, okay, they're being held, maybe for processing, questioning. Their guilt isn't established. They might be released soon.
That's exactly the right way to think about it. They're in custody, perhaps on remand if it's police-related, but it's not the same as serving a sentence.
But if the article says they were incarcerated for 5 years...
Then ding, 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 guilty verdict, sentence served. That's a definitive statement about a punitive outcome based on a legal conviction.
Okay, that seems clear. But here's a potential wrinkle. What about someone who has been convicted and sentenced, say, to 5 years incarceration, but maybe they're being held in a county jail while their lawyer files appeals before they get transferred to the big state prison? Are they technically detained again during that period?
That's a really good nuanced question. It trips people up. Legally speaking, once that sentence is imposed by the judge, their status shifts to incarcerated. Why? Because the reason they're being confined is now the court's punishment.
Even if the building they're in is temporary, like a local jail.
Exactly. The legal basis for holding them has changed. It's no longer pretrial detention. It's post-conviction confinement pursuant to the sentence. So even if they're physically in a holding facility, they are, in the eyes of the law, an incarcerated person serving their time.
Right. The justification changes everything. Incarceration is justified by the conviction. Detention is justified by other needs: investigation, administration, safety, school rules.
Precisely. That legal justification is the sharpest line between them.
And this links back to how people use the terms in wider debates, doesn't it?
It does. When activists or analysts talk about high incarceration rates, they're zeroing in on the end result of the penal system, the convictions, the long sentences, the punishment aspect.
Whereas discussions about, say, prolonged detention in immigration or political contexts are often highlighting the lack of a conviction, the fact that people are being held without that formal finding of guilt.
Which makes it a different kind of legal and human rights issue, separate from standard criminal punishment.
So the context really tells you everything. If you're thinking prison time after a trial, the word is incarceration.
Yep. And if you're thinking about any kind of temporary hold, custody before trial, immigration processing, or even staying after school, then it's detention.
You've got it.
Okay, I think we've really unpacked that. Paying attention to this difference is just essential if you want to accurately understand legal news, political commentary. You really can't swap them without changing the meaning entirely.
Absolutely not. So mission accomplished, I think. We've clarified these two key terms. Incarceration, prison as punishment, generally long-term, post-conviction, formal. Detention, temporary holding, much broader, covers everything from police custody to immigration centers to school. Yeah, definitely clearer now. But, thinking about how both terms can involve confinement or custody, it does raise a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to ponder as you see these words out in the wild.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, we talked about detention usually being temporary, but how long does a temporary administrative detention have to last, especially, say, in a political situation where maybe charges are never actually filed before it starts to feel like, or maybe even functionally become, a kind of de facto incarceration?
That's a deep question. That potential blurring between extended temporary holding and what looks like long-term punishment without trial, that's a really critical area in human rights law and political discussions globally.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, that's a fascinating place to leave it for today. Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.